On 7th of November, the President of the Republic of Uganda, His Excellency Yoweri Kaguta Museveni, addressed the nation on the issue of rationalization of Uganda Coffee Development Authority. And joining me to discuss this very pertinent issue is a panel of distinguished ladies and gentlemen who will help us unpack the events around that particular address. And later on, also in the other half of the show, we will discuss the conversation around the US elections that saw President Donald Trump become the 47th President of the United States of America. Tonight, we are discussing the presidential address on the presidential address after the rationalization of UCDA, but also we shall be discussing the US elections and its consequences on Africa. My name is Douglas Reconel. I'm your host or moderator for today, and we're happy to have this conversation. So in no particular order, I'll just quickly let the panelists introduce themselves. Then we shall dive straight into the conversation. So I'll begin from my extreme left to my immediate left, and then we start the conversation. You're most welcome.
Thank you so much, our dear moderator Drake, our dear viewers, and to my fellow panelists. I greet you all. My name is Kwesiga Emmanuel, and I am a year follow student at Uganda Christian University. I am a writer, but I am as well the contact person of the Hope Initiative Club under the Center for Constitutional Governance, that is the UCU chapter. Glad to be here.
Glad to have you here as well, and looking forward to having a thrilling conversation. The only lady on the show, you're most welcome.
Thank you so much, Jake. My name is Kahinju Debrah Yeson from Kyambogo University, the President Hope Initiative Club, Kyambogo chapter. I'm glad to be here once again.
Thank you. Glad to have you here once more. The familiar face on the show, both Youth Roundtable and Center University.
Thank you very much, Drake, the viewers, fellow panelists. My name is Masawi Ivan. I'm an engineer. I'm a leader at the FDC Youth League. My sister did refer to Kyambogo. While I was in Kyambogo, I was in the same club. I think we used to be at the other gardens down the other side for inter-university debate then. I can't lie, I was the best in debate. So I'm privileged to share with her, but more privileged to be with the latest writer in town.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Personally, I was mesmerized by his material. We always thought that such material and peace belong to people who are in their 50s. But if we see a generation of young people pull out such masterpieces of work, it shows there has been some growth in our education.
Definitely.
Thank you.
Thank you. Masawi, just allow me to stick with you. On 7th of November, events have been unfolding, the conversation around the rationalization of the agency of Uganda Coffee Development Authority. And the conversation around that sparked numerous conversations, a couple of debates. It raised eyebrows from various factions of electors in this country. And the president decided that after Parliament passed the particular bill to go ahead and rationalize, he went ahead and gave us an address and gave us justification and applauded the members of Parliament of the NRM for standing firm and agreeing to the rationalization. He says this particular entity was brewing corrupt officials. It was falling in line with the neo-colonial agenda of the colonialists that was in line of just having a single kind of economy that focuses on coffee, cotton, and maybe those other cash crops that he says the British made us believe that the economy only functions on those particular areas. But let's just start the conversation, steadfast and easy. Why this particular conversation? Bring us up to speed. And is the justification of the president right in his address?
Thank you very much, moderator. You know, in school, we are taught that leadership is influence. How do you influence others?
Yeah.
Mr. Museveni and his friends who went to the bush turned to leadership to force. Leadership is no longer about influence, but to force weight, force opinion. Is why we have had a lot of brutalization whenever we have such bills, either in parliament, they have been very cynical in the public space, they have created a lot of negative energies and unnecessary tensions. After very many opposition people have also leveraged on such case scenarios because they know the other person has no influence but uses force. Whenever we are a country growing but we define leadership as using force over influence, we lose a lot. I will give you a case scenario. I come from a coffee family. I come from this cooperative union. I'm even a member. Coffee marketing board was here in 1963. It even had a price assistance fund that catered for coffee when there was scarcity and stored in silence. They would give my parents, as I speak, studied in Kampala, but me by the time I was in high school, I couldn't afford. I studied at Mbareses. Because of how the economy of coffee that time was being managed and how they benefited from handling. When we came, I don't want to go to his reasons, and you know, he did a lot of state management, bringing a man to justify how UCDA manager is hard to meet, to show that there have been a lot of inefficiency for over 10 years, but you're the president. You're the number one benefit source of all information in the country. No one absorbs or receives more information than a president in the country. Then you stage manage bringing in witnesses. It was like a moot court. You bring people around to say. So, if you ask me the relevance of the UCDA merger, it was not in good faith. Why he came out to act and stage manage, he knows it will have a cost implication on some MPs and his vote in certain regions. The Vasoga were voting for NRM in the last election. They voted NRM MPs and voted Honorable Chagulani for president. It was not a surprise. The sugarcane scandal led them to what they are doing today. Even if we organize an election today in Vasoga, Bobby Wine will win, Museveni will be the second Amri at the side. He can't win because the sugarcane scandal in their lives has caused them distress. They have been deprived of economic empowerment, that they have to react, but not even reason, not comprehend anything about whatever good he will come with in spirit. When we say we are when we went into this merging, the Honorable Mwanga Kibumbi introduced the bill to Parliament. Then the government side also went to work and come and support. The whole merger issue was about looking for productivity. UCDA, this budget, in the current budget, was 41 billion shillings. State House, in the past financial year, was 802 billion shillings. State House has a presidential initiative on banana, on sweet potato, presidential initiative on exporting, presidential initiative on tailors, Simanyo on skilling the youth. It has State House and Corruption Court. It has State House land. All these are being duplicated from the original. We have Ministry of Lands, Ministry of Agriculture, we have IGG. All these are duplications to. We have presidential advisors who include Kenzo. I don't know what time Kenzo advises himself, because even Museveni is an artist. He has a song. So he also falls under Kenzo. Kenzo should advise Museveni, because even Museveni released the song in 2011. We should not forget. He released the Penkoni song which trended. So you can't fool Ugandans that you're merging. I actually was traveling to Mbale that night, but I wanted him to justify the 41 billion we are saving by merging UCDA. Where are we going to allocate? He said in roads in Congo, what? Drake, if you read how ministries are performing, the ministry performance report of this country, in the past financial year alone, Uganda lost $750 million because of aflatoxins in cassava and maize. Even South Sudan no longer wants to buy our maize. All that is under Ministry of Agriculture. Just imagine the loss. If you equate that into, it is almost 1 trillion shillings. The coffee that is being debated, why MPs had too much interest, is that the investment in coffee has been so low, but the return on investment has been high. If you look at the values. But that is actually where the MPs, especially opposition MPs, leveraged in the discussion on return on investment. The top 4 revenue generating sources of this country, what we export most is gold, tourism, coffee. I think the fourth is funny. The girls who go to Saudi Arabia, maids, they are the biggest. Those maids who are always on the airport on Monday. In Uganda, we have too much pride that we export our daughters to Ghana to be moppers. It is a very big industry. It is the 4th income generating in the country. But here we are looking at something like coffee, where we can put all these young people to begin to realize that if we build capacity using UCDA, we have young farmers, young entrepreneurs in the coffee sector, it would build capacity. Actually, when you look at his address, even when it came to prepare people to UCDA, it came to show that you can do nothing. Whatever I want is what I pass. You saw his justifications of NADS, how they brought up these programs he brought in 91 were not that they never existed. Obote's government had coffee marketing board. It was there. It had all these agencies existed before. But to him, he makes everything look that it started with Museveni and it will end with Museveni. I think that is where us we know he has done a lot to promote coffee. Over 112 countries in this country are in coffee. 88 of them are in Korabusta. Mine, the 9 in Bugiso are in Arabic. 15 are in both. He has also made some recommendable achievements as a president. But I go back to where we started. I don't always want to discuss the technical aspect of it, because to some viewers they will find it that is our president so low that he doesn't see that. But maybe because of the Pineti deal and the Inspire Africa, the brokers, how they have managed their way into his head. Because to me, like a coffee farmer, I saw that the president was thinking for coffee. The very much thinks of milk from his cows. Digging and grazing cattle are very different ventures. You can't think of coffee the very way you think when you're grazing cows. Milk is perishable, so you need to react the way he reacted. But coffee is not perishable. Coffee, you take time. We even benchmark countries who removed their Ethiopia went back to the National Coffee Marketing Board. Kenya did it. They have now gone back. Like when you are handling things which take seasons, you like sugarcane, you don't hurry because the cost implication of price fluctuations occur. That person can lack food for almost 2 years because he has put all his money in coffee. The return is not as fast for first-time investors. They own milk. On milk, in a year you can milk and export milk. So they rush, they force. I think as a young group of people, we should believe that leadership should not be about forcing others to your opinion, but you influence. But sell to them ideas. It doesn't us no good seeing that someone has been beaten, another one has been arrested. People are being scared how they lose going to parliament over coffee. We need to grow our politics at the same time grow our economy based on policy, but also on how we harmonize. We can no longer go into merging where the country's public expenditure is 7.8 trillion on only leaders. Uganda has 3.3 million leaders. I don't know if you guys get interested and audit how many leaders we have from the last election. We have 3 million. Actually, if you divide by 45, it means every leader represents 1,500 people. If you take the 527 MPs, the RDCs, LC1s, we have too much leaders in this country that our budget of only public administration is so huge that we need at least to merge that and put that to productivity, empowering young people, the education to be improved. But we still go for places where they are not the most essential for us to place in.
But you realize his rationale was the reason as to why the rationalization of UCDA was very crucial. He says, let me read verbatim, that the process, they duplicate the work of the ministry.
Who duplicates the work more than State House in this country? I've given you an example. They have State House and Corruption Unit. It duplicates both CID, IGG, Parliament, because even Parliament, the Auditor General, land, it duplicates Land Commission, Ministry of Lands. Give me any that doesn't duplicate in State House. The reason agencies like UCDA are there, and they have been under the line Ministry of Agriculture, is because it's where our strength is. We don't look at UCDA because we also want to have MDAs. We look at capacity building. The reason Coffee Marketing Board was there was not that because Vanyoro were not digging cassava. Up to now, they are the best diggers. That there was no GNAT pest in Acholi. It was there. But the reason it was there as Coffee Marketing Board is that Uganda had identified that it was the second in Africa and in the top 5 in the world in exporting coffee. We cannot have, for example, it is like us saying if State House has a tourism board, Uganda Tourism Board should be merged to Ministry of Tourism. Okay, why do you want Uganda Tourism Board to be merged to Ministry of Tourism? Yet it is working very hard to organize the sector that our tourism revenue increases. We wanted merging, but we wanted to merge with some sense. We wanted to merge with some bit of less merge as people who have done some business studies. Merge with justification that we are merging, but to increase. And you even tell us alternatives of the merging. Just like the minority report and other reports were. At some point during the discussion, even NRM MPs were in support of UCDA remaining because in their sense it made sense that the UCDA was performing. You can't give someone 41 billion in Uganda and collect close to you 900 million US dollars in coffee. That is not there in Uganda. It is very rare. Actually, if you look at agencies here in Uganda who are making the highest amount of money, you can't underrate UCDA.
Okay.
Not Uganda Railways, not not UNRWA, but UCDA. So we also sometimes want to support Museveni's actions, but really they are hard to defend because to a layman they don't make too much sense. The worst is they do stage management in a presidential address. He's a literature student. We are taught in literature that when you're doing mass communication, be organized. You've come to speak about an issue, then you bring again a Uganda man giving case scenarios, then again the Olaba manager, Ngasimulaba. So is he the only Ugandan that he should see the manager? People are employed to serve all Ugandans, but don't bring one person to tarnish a manager of UCDA's name because his NRM is more entitled to see the manager than others. You bring soldiers because their grandparents gave you food in the bush to justify they are more important than us, the coffee stakeholders. I think that has caused you know, we shall pretend that we have been defeated, but one day we shall defeat them. Right. I don't want to lie. These policies will one day be also changed. Just like he changed those he made. Even those who are coming, whether I'll be around or not, will change. That is how Trump is doing a lot of things that people thought Trump would never be in America, as we shall discuss. But times come and go. I mean, he came here with certain policies which were bad, some were good. They have since gone. We have him. But whenever we are doing things, especially things, we have taught our young people that leadership is about beating, about hate speech. You talk bad about Museveni, let Museveni also use all the necessary apparatus in his reach to oppress you. We have completely spoiled how people should see the debate about even the whole debate about UCDA had left was between Museveni and Uganda, Museveni and Bagisu. But there were also some good things that UCDA was doing and the bad, like he may have said, that he duplicates, is not doing what his reasons. Okay. He never brought it as something new. He abolished the coffee marketing board, he abolished silons. There are empty silons in Mpora up to now, they are now scrap that were abolished by NRM in 91 for UCDA. So how do you account to us that it was, you are very innovative? Okay, that is called adaptive innovation in terms of, you adapted. So that is it.
All right. Emma, from the very interesting submission that my brother Masawi has made, the justification that the president gives us, he first takes us back into history. He tells us that by the time he and the FRONASA, NRA, NRM, their rationale for coming into power was they looked at the ideology that was in place, that only 9% of the Ugandans enjoyed at least some, were in the money economy, and 91% weren't, because the 91% were possibly, if you do not fall in line of the labor that the British want, you'd definitely not be employed. So that is what informed them to, first of all, ally with political parties like UPC, DP, Kabaka Yeka, because they had similar ideologies. But later on, when he says he found out that the ideologies weren't so much befitting upon them, and when the Amin overtook Obote and they went into power, they destabilized the economy. He says they joined and went into the bush because they wanted to create a patriotic front that makes everyone fall under the money economy. So when they came back into power in 1986, they came up with a 10-point program. And he says that 10-point program was in 5 phases. And the 5 phases was, first of all, re-establishing the small island economy that coffee falls under. He says he accepted to allow bodies like UCDA to operate there. But now, the time of UCDA has passed, giving us justifications of one, duplicating other agencies, it is a brewing entity for corrupt officials, among other reasons. So in him justifying the rationalization of UCDA, UCDA as an entity is well known to have at least been among the best performing agencies in this country. If at all, it is the second largest exporting entity in this country. And then he says this particular entity, UCDA, with its performance, is brewing corrupt officials, it is duplicating the work of other agencies, and it is not efficient. Is it justified, therefore, to say that the MPs of the NRM MPs who went ahead and rationalized this entity because, well, they're duplicating other agencies, they are corrupt, among other reasons, to go ahead and give us this address and justify the rationalization?
Thank you so much, Drake, for that wonderful question. I'd love to start on a note that the idea, the RAPEX, that is the rationalization of government agencies and public expenditure policy, initially is not a bad idea. Looking at its primary objectives and what it is intended to achieve, you would honestly have to love it. Because if we are saying that it is to minimize government expenditure and to do away with incompetent organs and entities, isn't that a good idea? I believe it is. But now for me, my focus is not just there, but it is on the implementation of the same and what agencies are being rationalized. Let's, for example, from the legal perspective, let's analyze and assess Article 1 of the Constitution. The Constitution is sui generis. It is above any other law in Uganda. Article 1 from the onset tells us that sovereignty is to the people, that people shall be governed according to their wishes, and that even the state or their powers have their legality emanating from the people. Now, specifically going down to our subject matter, the discussion today. People, I am not from a coffee farming background. We are majorly cattle keepers. But the Baganda have a proverb that chiri atabala, chiri anasigadde waka. And in other words, whatever might kill you who is outside this building might as well kill me as well. So I am not far away from this reality. After all, injustice anywhere is injustice.
The next president may rationalize country. Yes.
After all, injustice anywhere is injustice everywhere. So I can as well be a victim of the same policy. And so I, not being from a coffee origin, does not deter me or blur me from reality. Now let's assess in line with that article 1 that I just made mention of. If I were to ask you, Drake, what is the feedback or the response of the general populace about the rationalization, and where is the position of the state? Do the two correlate? I am asking you, answer that.
Definitely not.
There isn't a correlation. So in that instance, if you are president, I wouldn't be wrong to say that his statements are rodomontade and they are guided by spite and malafide. Is that confusing?
I know, to proceed. Maybe you can guide the audience because they're using very heavy jargon.
We paid tuition.
Rodomontades. These are statements that you make because you have influence or by virtue of your position. And spite is we know spite is malicious intent, and malified that is as well the same. So because I am asking myself, you are president, well, we do agree and you have authority. But Article 1 tells that your authority you should exercise is in line with what people want. Let's also look at...
the same constitution that they put in place in 1995.
Yes, 1995. Let us look at the positions of the parties, that is the ruling government and the opposition members. Is it by coincidence that most, well, at least 90 plus members of the inner rim are pro-rationalization and 90% or plus of opposition members are anti-rationalization? Is it by coincidence? Or is it by design and plan? Do you get that? Power. You see, there is a proverb that when you have a hammer in your hand, you are bound to look at every obstacle as a nail. That is exactly what happens with our government. You see, I must tell you people that when we are on such shows, for example, unfortunately, politics has become the subject matter of just everything. That when you get to such a show and you are discussing on a neutral basis and matters the way they are, definitely the viewers out there are going to take positions of this one is anti-government, this one is government. What does that tell you? That as a country, we are blinded from issues that actually do affect us, and we are only being rigged to our political affiliations, which is very bad. This is part of what I've written about in my book. We must learn to discern and make a distinction between our affairs as a populace and politics. The two are quite distinct. So, getting back to your question, Drake, I believe this was not a good strategy for a number of issues. If the president is pro-rationalization, what substitute does he have for people that have been dependent on coffee? Of course, the argument here is going to be, but we are not doing away with it. We are instead putting it under a bigger entity. That is true. But look, like he just made mention of, coffee is one of the crops that we as a country have been benefiting from. And if you come and rationalize it, in other words, in actual sense, you are having its powers reduced. Yes, because it is under another bigger entity. Meaning that if it is to do anything in regards to its coffee planting and export and whatnot, the hierarchy is now much bigger because it is our Ministry of Agriculture. As opposed to when if it were an independent entity like
the National Coffee Act was swallowed.
That is now off. So you make this quite harder for the 2 million plus households that have been largely dependent on coffee. Of course, there will be benefits. It's not that they are saying that you won't have coffee planted anymore, but what is the implication of this entire thing? I want to tell you, for example, like he said, he alluded to coffee and milk. Like I said, we are cattle keepers. But if you do not sell the milk, or if the price of the milk has gone low, it doesn't imply that even the price of cows in general has gone low. So meaning you might not sell the milk, but you might have a cow to sell. What about a household that is largely, by and large, dependent on coffee? If it doesn't sell coffee, what is it going to sell?
There is no coffee firewood. There is
no coffee firewood, nothing. But you have milk and a cow. Those are two sources. There are two in one. So I think it is quite an injustice.
You have meat and milk.
Yes.
You can even sell horns.
Yeah, you can.
You see, the Nigerians have a proverb that a toad does not run in the daytime for nothing. And the English equally say that there is no smoke without fire. So I think it would be disastrous for us to ignore the cries of the people. If this was made in kind of a referendum that people have been consulted or whatever, of course I know that given our present leadership, that would as well consume so much money, but that is no longer an issue with us because it is the norm. So if you just wake up one day and you are a leader and you don't let people exercise their will and wishes, but you go by your whims, then I think that's quite bad. If you reach an extent of saying that those against your idea are criminals, that word, it is as big as it sounds, but it is much bigger than it actually sounds. Examine the intent and the emotions with which you actually say that word. That they are criminals standing in the way of development, and that they are not ready for you. They are going to face
This
fire.
is what he said. I come here to address you on the indiscipline, lack of patriotism, and possible corruption and criminality by some actors who can endanger our future if they are not firmly dealt with.
That is exactly it. You see, if this is what we are just saying of our opinions, it would be different. But this is reality. This is on record.
Yeah.
This is on record. In other words, do you think that your opinion prevails over the rest of the 49 million Ugandans plus? Are you saying that the 49 million Ugandans do not want development, that you like it more than they do? How about if you felt that you have a very good idea, how about you rather convince them and open them to the reality?
But Emma, this is the president's justification that they came into power understanding that there was a neo-colonial economy that only focused on those things like coffee, cotton, etc. What they're trying to create for you Ugandans is an avenue that would give you a bigger spectrum. Having it under an entity like Ministry of Agriculture presents you with endless possibilities. That is the justification.
But Drake, I gave you a case now that he found here coffee marketing board. What he's abolishing is not that he came with him. Just like he's making it clear. These ideas have been nationalistic. People have contributed. He's only trying to guide us that the Uganda does not start and end with Masawi. We are not rubbishing all of that he has also done. But the issue of merging UCDA has a history. We don't want to be, okay, in a country where people don't read and not exposed, his show which he acts on that address is fit for purpose for those who are not informed. But you will not fool people like us who have grown in coffee families that UCDA came in 90. Coffee Marketing Board had houses in UK where Museveni slept after running from Sweden. He even writes it in one of his books. It has even infrastructure in Mombasa up to date. This is even using some cheap coffee. He has actually guided well that certain things as a country need to have consensus because it builds the belief. But once you always refer to people who don't agree with you, it is just like we got the speaker's comment of saying, make sure the Uganda don't raise the number. The people going to suffer with such statements are us, the young people, who have to deal with bringing other people to consensus and dialogue. That really, they are dividing us basing on the economic lines. That coffee growing people will be divided to say, anyone who is NRM really doesn't wish us well. But is the whole NRM 7? Yes, maybe to some extent. But there are those who also go there as to survive. The cross-cutting statements of accusing always people don't agree with you to be criminal. Do not only kill the leadership space, but even economically they disempower. People in their heads are disempowered to contribute because they think if Museveni will do everything for this country. He is the chief data, he is the chief oppressor, he is the chief administrator, he is the father and mother, he cooks, he serves, he mops the house, he sweeps the compound. The narrative the president creates in most of his speeches is that Ugandans will never do anything successful without him. I've told you here, we shall be here or we shall not be here. Some of these things, when he goes there, we shall bring them back to what they were supposed to be. Whether I'm there or I'm not there, they will happen. He can be a god of today, but we have had here very many gods. Some were even like local gods. They came, they came back and pushed him out of this country. But we are here. Isn't Akena living? Wasn't his father president? If Obote did everything bad, why is Akena able to be a member of parliament and even move in Kampala freely? Mama Millie Obote has been here. She's a Muganda. But even when her husband expelled the Kabaka, the Baganda, including the Katikiro, go to visit her to take on her. But things change. We need to always have a baseline for continuity. But we not people can look at the UCDA from the economical perspective, but on the political and leadership perspective, like he gives, it leaves us very divided, very cynical about the kind of economics government is implementing.
Just to complete, thank you for the very important supplement. You see, Drake, a gentleman called Martin Rees writes a book titled Our Final Century. And in that he makes a statement that a man convinced against his idea is still of the same idea or opinion. I want us to contrast that with what is called the law of eventuality. That as you do a thing, you should be able to have the broader reflection of what is likely going to happen in the future. You could as well compare that to the graph psychology, that being able to forecast. And as a leader, if you lack that, then you lack the fundamentals of leadership and you are a failed leader. A leader should be able to look further than the rest of the people he leads. Now, let's slightly divert from the economic and what implication of the rationalization, but let us look at what sentiments has it planted in the local populace and what repercussions or ramifications does that have. I want to tell you that there is a section of Ugandans that didn't know about the existence of UCDA and coffee farmers. I want to tell you there are people that knew about it but do not have a full grasp of what it has been doing. In other words, this is a person who has been in the village, they've been growing their coffee and selling it at whatever the price, but they are the people making the loudest noise today. But that is not something you can ignore. Because they've had now, in this period, they've been able to get a picture, and all they've had, because they are not people who are learned or who can actually be able to read such documents and whatnot, they've had, and they've been told by those that are above, that Museveni is against Baganda, Museveni is against coffee. And what I will understand as a layman who is just somewhere in my village doing my coffee, that is all I am going to take. What impact does this have in the long run? How am I going to look at a person who is from the West, whose animals have not been talked about? In other words, if, for example, as a country we are grappling with the evil of discrimination and tribalism, and such a thing happens, and you are simply forcing it, it's like an injection that you are injecting a kid against polio or whatever it is. You must do it. I mean, whether you want or not, it is predetermined. Then what was the essence of it even going to parliament? So I think its implications are much more than what we already see, but there are those that we are going to see, and they will be sufficing in the long run. But as a matter of fact, time never lies. It is so stated that time tells a honest man from a liar. Let's wait and see. Wait and see how it goes. But as a matter of fact, in as much as I would be in support of the entire concept of RAPEX, this rationalization thing, I do not like the manner in which it is being executed. It is so irrational and regrettable, and it beats my conscience that as a country pretending to be a democratic nation, this is the best we can do. It just beats my conscience. I do not have to be NRM, I do not have to be opposition, opposition, but I only have to be Ugandan to be able to see these things. And it's quite saddening and very absurd.
True. Debrah, you've been very silent, and I'd just like to engage you on this point. Just from what you said, let's look at the bigger picture of the consequences that we are to experience in terms of the divide that it has created. You saw the statement that he alluded to, or the speaker made. Do not let the Baganda get those numbers. And those are just signs that there are actually bigger things to this thing. And there could be tribal lines, there could be bigger consequences that we are yet to experience. And something that we talked about, cries of the people, that the majority of Ugandans actually do not align to the idea of rationalization of UCDA. Now, speaking from the perspective of the ordinary Ugandan and alluding to the constitution that this particular government put in place in 1995, Article 1, as it says, speaks about the power belonging to the people. In such scenarios, we have seen laws being passed that Ugandans are against, but yet they still pass it. The constitution, of course, remember the Tojiko article, people were against the idea of touching the constitution and changing certain particular articles and provisions. They still touched it. UCDA. So whatever the president says, as he said, he's the father, he's the mother, he's the cleaner, that is his statement.
The cook understand. That man is not easy.
Let us look at the cries of the people. Are we at this stage whereby our voices are not considered? We are just secondary to any issue that affects us.
Actually, most times when you take a look at what is really happening, the reality strikes hard. We say a lot, we talk so much, maybe our leaders also promise so much, but at the end of it all, when you look back at what is happening, like, we are really living the lives we never want to live in. I've been, like, from since I was born to now, His Excellency has been the president. It has happened, so many bills have come up, amendments, and I doubt there is any that has come up that people did support, that didn't push through. Ask yourself why. Does it mean that, at the end of it all, people got to know the importance and supported it, like the Toji Kwatako, even others that came up? Or does it mean that our say at the end of it all does not really matter? And when you take a closer look at it, it more looks like our say does not really matter in this. Why? These things have happened once and again. People are against it, not once, not twice, several times. Not one, not two people. Now when you look at this whole coffee thing, it's not actually only coffee farmers in it, because it's not only the coffee farmers who benefit from it at the end of it all. Even other ordinary people, they do benefit from it. And also the solidarity we talk about. You may benefit from it and I do not directly.
Actually, the drinkers of coffee benefit more than me who do.
Exactly. So at the end of it all, it's a channel that is affecting us all. But the reality of it is that the fact our voices really do not matter to a bigger extent. And then also, I do not know why, when I see someone in parliament, what I expect is you have to be intelligent. Like, okay, you have to be reasoning. By the time an educated person who has gone through nursery, primary, secondary, university, maybe even have a doctorate. Okay, the problem could be nursery. How do you make such a tribalistic statement in parliament, on cameras? Like the whole world is watching and you don't even take a moment to think. So where is the problem?
Were you not told that it was AI generated, or you didn't know about that?
No, please. Also AI is becoming another excuse for people, but no, they won't get away with it. Like, you just have to be conscious about certain things that you say. Like the whole world, the idea that the whole world is watching and you are aware and you go ahead to make that statement, what does it mean? It means that these people are getting comfortable where they are. They feel like I'm in a position, like he said, you have a hammer, so whatever you see is like a nail, so I'm going to bang however I can. After all, I'm the one having it. Little do they know that, at one point you're going to lose it. Maybe it's going to be passed to another person. And the whole government system and the way it is drawn, how it is, it appears so hard to move the hammer from one person to another. So those people get so comfortable in their positions. They end up saying what they want. They do what they want. Like, so right now, what they are doing is just maybe like a procedure. Like, okay, because I want to do this, but because I have to take it through parliament, I'll just do it for the sake of it. But it does not really matter what some MPs have to say. It does not matter what the people have to say. It's what I want to do. I'm just using this as a channel for formality. Let me just do it. And that is really, because we pose as a democratic state, but when you see what is happening, we really are not. Then the other thing about, the justifications he gave, from all the other nation addresses he has always told us that coffee is the backbone of our economy. What does that mean? It means that even with all the other crops that exist in Uganda, coffee is one crop that stands out. We stand on it, we rely on it more than others. So it's kind of self-defeating for him to come back and say that it is maybe a neo-colonialism tactic that we have to look at only these specific crops and leave others. Why didn't you realize that about 20 years ago? You've been in power for 30 years. And like he said, you see even the money that is allocated to them, it's not money that is a lot. If you really wanted to save for the country, there's so many things from which, he could have gotten money from.
His shirts alone are more than the budget of
I'm not
UCDA.
sure
By the way, to be honest, Museveni's shirts, yeah. more money than UCDA.
But his shirts, like, there's nothing really special about his shirts, they're like, yeah. But there are so many things. Look at the money that is allocated to State House itself. Look at our MPs, however much we love them and all that. Yes, like, they get a lot of money for nothing. Someone's trip to Dubai to learn whatever, I don't even know what they learn from there because we've never seen any tangible results. Why don't you, get money from there other than from a body that you put in place, that was in place for a reason? And the other thing we don't need to forget, Drake, is that the reason why this body is in existence, or was in existence, it was like a middleman between the ministry and the lower person. So at the end of the day, you're taking away the middleman, and because you have claims of corruption, like we've been seeing corruption, these MPs and whoever they were, those that stole iron sheets, everyone knew them, we had names. What did he do? Did he really do anything? Okay, he might have tried to do something, but they're still there. I think most of them are still even in parliament, those who are members of parliament. Cabinet ministers, they were not sacked, they were not, like, nothing was done. So just because there is maybe a possibility of corruption in this body, you decide to withdraw the entire body. It's really not a reason, a justifiable reason. I think that is just like a scapegoat, like it is just something he has put for as a reason, to give us a reason for the sake of it, but it is really not it, and does not really help. And at the end of it all, most farmers are going to suffer this, because even when you look at maybe how it's going to work, already the ministry itself has its loopholes. It's a ministry of agriculture, so there are so many things they are looking at. Remember, coffee is our backbone. That is why it had its own body, because it is something that we are relying on more than other crops. Definitely we shall care about the other farmers, the other crops. They can, survive under the ministry, but because this is a special sector, we have not even invested much in it, but we are getting more from it, so it needs that kind of attention that ECDA was giving it at the end of it all. So withdrawing it is like, it's really not justifiable. There's no money, actually. I promise you, there's no money they're going to save. That 41 billion they used to give them per year, trust me, you look for it, I don't know when, you will not find it anywhere.
Actually, he's a very tricky man. He ran that he's going to talk to people in Bukede and this about wealth creation. Immediately after his address, he went to Bali, knowing he wants to brainwash them to not to be open-minded. Because the locals were saying this is a strategy of killing our coffee so that you replace number 3 with maybe milk. No. Uganda's export is milk.
But you can't.
But we should never see any region developing as a threat to another region, or any region having something productive as a threat to another. That is how bad the process of handling UCDA left Ugandans divided in opinion and how they should see leadership policies.
It's been a very wonderful half of the issue. As we come back to the second half, we talk about the US election and its consequences. I shall wrap up us on the conversation. Something I would like us to start with, and maybe something to find out. There was a letter that Professor, the current Chancellor of Makerere University wrote about UCDA rationalization. He says, and as I quote, that UCDA as he knew it was an entity that operated on its own. Its survival was entirely on the exports, the tax that they would charge from the coffee that they would export. That was the money they used for its survival, and there was a lot of money that they were generating. But now there's a possibility that the government has noticed that there is an avenue to make money. Those are allegations that are made, that they would like to access that, but also see ways on how to exploit that. But we shall get into that conversation in the second half of the show. Otherwise, it's been great having this conversation. Stay with us and see you shortly.
Digital rights are those human rights and legal rights that allow individuals to access, use, create and publish digital media, or to access and use computers, other electronic devices and telecommunication networks. Digital rights include a right to freedom of expression, information and communication through technology, a right to privacy and data protection, a right to credit for personal works, a right to universal and equal digital access, a right to identity, a right to anonymity, a right to be forgotten, and a right for protection of minors, among others. The state's digital rights are frequently violated through various unfair actions, for example, blockage of websites and social networks, theft of credentials, unauthorized use of people's data for personal gain, privacy intrusion, online censorship, arrests and intimidation of online users, internet blockages, and the proliferation of laws and regulations that undermine the potential of technology to drive social, economic, and political development worldwide. It is hence every citizen's responsibility to respect rights of other digital users and to speak out or report to the responsible parties when one's rights are violated.
Welcome back from the break. Just before we went into the break, we were discussing the presidential address after the rationalization of UCDA. Thank you very much for saying this. And the conversation just before we went into the break, we were trying to wrap up on the presidential address after the rationalization of UCDA. And just before we went into the break, I posed the question that could government's intent be that they would like to access the money that UCDA was making? What are your thoughts on that?
Thank you for having me. Straight away answer your question by saying, yes, they would love to use the money, but for a more intentional reason than the opposition is speculating.
I'd like to hear
in my understanding, UCDA was established in 1991, right? Now, I believe in its calculation, according to the Ministry of Agriculture and the President, it can do away without UCDA, rationalizing it and putting it under the ministry. Its operations can, I think what Ugandans are worried, or coffee farmers to be more specific, is the future of their sales, okay? But I think it is a misguidance from their leaders. I want to say opposition, and I firmly say this. It is opposition specifically, because the government is giving assurance. Recently, the Minister of Agriculture was addressing the media. Well, he was actually on a certain TV station that I won't mention. And he said that there is nothing big that is going to change. It is rather change of direct administration. Uganda Coffee Development Authority to the Ministry of Agriculture. What the opposition was trying to paint a picture to the people that could not maybe understand how it works is that they will lose the license, that international license. I think you've heard of that as well. They said that the trade, something called a trademark, that is copyrights are reserved for Uganda Coffee Development Authority. Now, Uganda Coffee Development Authority is entirely a government agency. Not so. The same government that you're criticizing for doing what? The opposition, I'm sorry to say. I don't know if anyone is criticizing. Criticizing for, I don't know, trying to abolish coffee farming entirely. But in my understanding, the government has given us, I'm a coffee farmer, the assurance that one, there's nothing that will change, negatively at least, in my understanding. We shall still have our license to export. We shall still sell our coffee. I don't know what.
But the argument here is that it won't be the same, because having government involved means more red tape, more bureaucracy, and a possibility of hiked prices and taxes, crazy taxes.
My argument is, Uganda Coffee Development Authority, okay, it is an agency under.
It was on its own, yes, but it was definitely under the Ministry of Agriculture.
And it reports to?
The ministry.
So what is the query here? If the Ministry of Agriculture has had ill intentions for the prosperity of coffee farmers and Uganda Coffee Development Authority. Do you think for all the time that it has been under it, this is the time it has thought to harm its operations or stop it? I don't believe.
Okay.
Yeah, I don't believe. Ugandans should also know that the rationalizing is not only going to affect the coffee farmers. My brother here, before I came in, he was saying he's largely into the cattle business. You know what is happening to the Dairy Development Authority. You know what's happening to the Uganda National Roads Authority. And you know that all these agencies have designated works or operations. For example, UNRWA. When UNRWA is constructing a road, I have a friend whose family was affected recently. But it was an expansion of a road somewhere. And there was a problem of compensation. Now, for the people that have boundaries with road reserves, when they hear that UNRWA is being put under Ministry of Works, when they come up with the same claims, saying that since we have no faith in the Ministry of Works, but you should note that it has not been tested in that kind of way. When was UNRWA brought in place, if I'm to ask you?
But Mpora, the argument is, you see, even when we rationalize and have those agencies put back into their into the mother ministries, the ministries have been in existence. Yes. And if you even overheard the Minister of Works talking about they do not have powers that fall in line with maybe say the roads, etc., etc. And now that the agency is going back to them, the argument isn't that they will not be doing their job or they will be overseeing that. The issue is the bureaucracy, the corruption, and the inefficiency that are in the ministries, the incompetences that people are arguing for is what they're trying to see here. That even when we go ahead and rationalize and give all these powers back to the ministries, the efficiency that they were experiencing won't be the same. And that's the argument.
I understand you, but unlike them, I believe whenever a government is making such a step, it is not getting an agency and throwing it there. Okay? There are going to be proper guidelines that follow.
Yeah.
Okay? Uganda Coffee Development Authority under the Ministry of Agriculture is going to be a department. I don't know if you know how departments in ministries work. They have designated activities. Now the bureaucracy that you're talking about, I think we should give the government a benefit of doubt.
It's all right. We are going to give them the benefit of doubt. But that benefit of doubt has cost Ugandans, very many Ugandans. And that is why they're arguing against it.
Cedric, allow me to chip in.
Yeah.
I've been so reluctant and I thought this whole debate ends here and I thought to keep quiet and just let him go. But for purposes of doing justice to our esteemed viewers, I do not want him to be so hypothetical. I'd rather prefer that he's pragmatic. When he refers to, because he seems to be getting on the surface of things and he doesn't give us the exact picture, he's more of opinion as opposed to reality. When you talk of guidelines, okay, if I am to simply ask you a small question, in whose favor is government doing all that it is doing?
In the favor of the government and its citizens.
Who is the government? Yes, simply stick to that. It is doing it in favor of the people. Now, if the people have their opinion, which they should exercise, and they're exercising it by saying no, you as government, who is serving people's interests, where do you get the guts to say that we are saying this is what is good for you, when people are saying we do not like that?
I'm sorry to ask.
No, it's okay. You don't have to apologize.
Sorry, I'm sorry to interrupt you. When the people are saying no, this is this is coming up at a legislative level. We have people that are called members of parliament, constituent representatives. Okay? Now, if when it was put out to vote, the majority voted.
Let me just chip in on that. You see, the majority, even if you read the address, the president says, I'd like to thank the NRM MPs. The other half of the show, the conversation was, the MPs that we have, the NRM MPs that we've had, we have seen scenarios on legislation that Ugandans were against. And because the NRM MPs are the majority in parliament, whether it is right or wrong, they will side with what our previous panelists said. The president is the father, is the mother, is the cook, is the grandma, everything. The president says this must pass, it passes. No one questions. And they are the majority. Or there are over 300 and plus MPs who are NRM. And that just tells you, we know that yes, parliament is a representation of the people. But when, how often do the MPs who sit in the other camp represent the views of the people? And that is the concern. That's why we ask, the cries of the people, are they really heard?
I think it is a constant. Now, I think it is on an individual basis once you're elected into that parliament. It is a mandate, yes, first from the people that voted for you, and then for your role in the parliament, to go back and consult the people that elected you on the national sensitive matters that require a vote. Okay, a vote in which case will be the representation of, let's say, Mpora or Kabarole. That the people of Kabarole, through their MP, have voted. So for you to put up an argument and say that they voted yes because the president told them to vote yes, I don't believe it.
Before we can run, I want to subject him to sort of a small cross-examination. First, it is a question of yes and a no. Do you opine that this bill is a reflection of the demands and wishes of Ugandan citizens? Yes. Okay, we can proceed. Because
you definitely agree that this bill was in light and in view of the views of Ugandans.
Say it in front. Please face the camera and tell the people.
20 years, I do. You do? Yes. All right, we started.
At least government had someone,
No, it's all right.
No, actually, you didn't come here to say that.
I know it's okay. We are not. We are simply debating our
discussion. And it's good to know that that other young people will think that it's a good one.
Before we end, we shall have very many things that will emerge in such dimension. So I believe, instead of ranting how Museveni uses his members of parliament, I think you should go to the same people, or you as yourselves, if you're registering dissatisfaction with the democratic practices in parliament, you should find alternatives. That if something is affecting the country generally, maybe you should vote again for it. Because if you do not have faith in the people that you are not forced to vote for, okay? Because I want to believe that these NRM members of parliament that you're saying do not represent their constituencies, but rather represent the ideas of the president. 2026 is coming. They are the same people. I don't know where you come from, but probably NRM is going to take up that member of parliament seat.
Let's just take the conversation there and shift gears to what is loomingly something that is quite interesting for our continent as well. And that's the elephant in the room. Trump wins the 2024 elections, and they declared victory, and he's the president of the 47th president of the United States of America. And for people who follow, let's say, business, people who follow other interesting trajectories, economically there's been a rise in stock. There has been a rise for people who in our countries against cryptocurrency, but other countries abroad have seen a rise in coins like BTC and Mark. But where does that leave Africa as a continent? Because with Trump winning, we know in his previous term, there were cuts in donor funding to Africa, among other reasons. But there also could be positives because Trump is not someone who's against humanitarian issues. So African leaders who have received sanctions, there could be grounds for them to jubilate as well. So right now I just want us to discuss the consequences of Trump winning the 2024 elections and being declared victorious and the 47th president of the United States of America. Emmanuel, what are those consequences that Trump victory faces or presents to Africa as a continent?
Thank you so much, Drake. I am glad this actually comes up. We've been in this U.S. election session or season, and I've personally been looking at the reactions and the responses from the different Ugandans of all sorts of social stature and age, and I've been worried. I've personally been able to interact with a number of people. I was personally pro-Trump. I was in support of Trump. But later on, as I'll give you reasons as to why I supported him, you'll wonder if he is the person I should have supported, because they are quite distinct from what you should have thought, because they are rather radical in a way. A person would openly tell you that I have nothing to do with the US elections, that I don't care. I mean, you would even ask a person which people are in the race and they would hardly tell. Well, knowledge is not something you will force onto a person. It is something we acquire at the individual volition and initiative. But it is quite unfortunate because it's not something to brag about that you lack knowledge. And it's not sufficient that you only know about Ugandan politics and not anything beyond that, because the world is a global village, as the phrase is currently. So looking at one, I want to take a position that the US elections, politics and political policies have a direct impact on the world, let alone Uganda or Africa in general. A writer called Catherine Gegot writes a book titled Why Europe Intervenes in Africa. And she takes a position that, as opposed to what we Africans think, that Europe intervenes in Africa on humanitarian grounds, which has never been the case. You and I and the rest of the people in this room know that Europe has never been that charitable that it runs for humanitarian causes, but rather for personal interests. And the same is true whether Kamara is president, whether Trump is president. I get back to my position. Trump, part of what he says, I just pray that he implements it. Many of the people that were not for Trump were saying that imagine he wins the election, what is going to happen, because part of his policy and his manifesto is that he's going to deport Africans and whatnot. And I keep telling people that America is not Uganda. The problem is that our Ugandan politics has blurred us of the politics of the rest of the continents and the world. People think that if Donald Trump becomes president like he is, he has the mandate to wake up tomorrow and he says this will happen, and it happens like the case in Uganda. That's never the case. In America, you might have your wishes as president, yet I agree that by virtue of your position, you could be able to influence a thing or two. But it is not as guaranteed as it is here in Uganda, like we're from debating about the coffee debate, and our president has been at the helm of it. It is not the case with the USA. But however, I am saying that if he does implement whatever he says, it is just quite so good. The fact that people were against Trump because he is opposed to Africans, which justification he gives, he calls us all sorts of names, which to me I never find offensive, because that's the position we've chosen to take. We have leaders who do not fight for us. And as a result, we flock other countries looking for opportunities and running out from political persuasion and whatnot. Why do we want to have comfort in a foreign land if our own leadership has not created a hospitable environment for us to pride in? That should not be a refuge for you. The first instance should be that you have that comfort at home. Okay, if Trump does not have that policy, is it guaranteed that even in the next 100 years, you would want to go to America as much as you would wish to? Definitely not. The priority should be, in fact, he should implement that, he should be so radical so that our leaders, or we, the electorate, can be open to voting or having leaders, not just Uganda, but Africa in general. Having leaders in positions, leaders who are pro-people, who are going to create an environment that is comfortable and conducive for us to stay in. Because why do you want to have a Uganda in America? Let him deport all of them. This is a problem. You see, in as much as you might want to go there and have their jobs and whatnot, how long is that going to last? And you expect the Americans to be quiet for centuries as the African population overpowers their own? That is never to happen, so the earlier the better. But also, he puts it that he's more intentional about deporting the illegal immigrants and kind of not. So if you are an illegal immigrant, we as Ugandans are daily complaining about infiltration and you know, the foreigners. The last time there was a debate about the Indians and whatnot, having the Eritreans having their businesses in Uganda. We are not comfortable with people from the other countries who come and take over our country. But then, where do we get the guts to think that for us we should be doing that in another country? In other words, are we saying that we would want a president who is not concerned, not just about his people, but also just lets in everyone, whether they are illegal or formal entrants or not? Definitely not. Where do we get the guts to want the best for us, and we do not want the best for? I mean, for God's sake, wouldn't we want a president who is protective of their country, regardless of whether it is a neighboring country or a country or not? He's the ideal president, and I'm glad he made it through. But also look at the point of, I want to correct this. People thought that because Kamara has always thought for sympathy of I am a lady, I have a black origin and kind of sort. I mean, honestly speaking, you viewing, where do you get the confidence to think that in America, because a person has a black inclination, they are going to have potential to accommodate you and all your queries? That never happens. Barack Obama is of African descent. Apart from coming to check on his relatives in Kenya while he was president of America, how did Africa benefit from his presidency?
Rather, we actually experienced
all sorts of wars. We had our leaders being attacked and killed. I mean, you people, we need to be open to reality. We just don't have to examine things on the surface. Okay, if about Kamara, let us look at, because at least Barack Obama has been president, specifically look at him and ask yourself, what did he do? What did we suffer? In as much as Trump is very vocal and he'll abuse you and call you asshole and whatnot, Africans do not deserve to exist because of their low intellect and all sorts of names, I think that should be an opportunity for you to realize that you are being undermined on grounds of your own incompetency. And if you have leaders who are so intentional, they should be able to know that, hey, you mean I'm president of Uganda and my country, my citizens are being termed as assholes. What do I do to overturn this notion? You should be provoked to work for your people. You should be provoked to have a better country that matches the status of that superior nation. Because are you comfortable as African countries in the position of developing countries? Do we always get pride in that, of being called developing countries? I mean, is it something to boast around that you are being called developed? And you've done away with the colonialism, so said, in the last 50 or so years as African countries, and you are still being called developed. It is not something to take pride in. So let the man abuse us, let him deny us his aid, let him deport us if he wishes, so that we can be provoked enough to have effective leadership, or we as the electorate that does actually vote for these leaders should be provoked to find leaders that are going to match. Because it is so said, as I conclude, that necessity is the mother of invention. The moment there isn't necessity, then you can never have anything practical. Because all that we do is derived out of need to have the same. Because if you do not have a need, you are not provoked to find a solution for the same. Because a solution to what? That is why I was pro-Trump, and I'm glad he won. And I pray that he does implement that manifestation. For how long are we going to depend on foreign aid? Yet our own countries have enough money, which money is being swindled by our own leaders, and they are being covered by by the top leadership in the guise of they're investing in our own country. For how long are we going to tolerate that position? It is not a question of NRM, it's not a question of FDC, it is a question of being Africans and being intentional about fighting for what we want, not expecting to be fed like a child being fed on their mother's breast milk. We need to go past that stage, honestly.
All right. Debrah, I saw you making faces when he was alluding to Kamala Harris. I have a feeling on the end that I was very dissatisfied with the loss.
Not really. The only problem I have as a woman is people largely thinking that when a woman stands up to do something, it's maybe because they're a woman and that will give them sympathy. I wouldn't say I was Kamala or what, just because I'm a woman does not necessitate I'm going to, support a woman. Sometimes it's about capacity and all that. So the face I made was just about that. It's not just about being a woman and that. Maybe she didn't have the capacity, maybe what, but I do not think the main thing that made her stand in the race was womanhood. And then about the results of the election. Firstly, I was amazed. I was amazed that Trump won, because I had a very different perspective of the world thanks to media. One thing I realized that media pushes specific things to us.
Mainstream media.
Yeah, and then we buy in as a very different idea of what is happening actually in reality. One thing better, from what you could tell on Kamala's stance, you could really see that she's someone who was not real. Like, even her manifestation was not hers. So, and she was fronting so much of the human rights, all that, the LGBTQ, things that the mainstream media has made us believe are priorities for Americans. And then what does Trump do? Trump comes and bluntly tells them, I'm not going to tolerate things like gender reassignment for children, things that we thought maybe
Re-establishing Christianity.
Yes.
Things that
real conservative ideas. Even we call them conservative because that's what mainstream media has made us believe, that, America is so developed to the extent that all they care is the things they believe in, the rights they believe in, not maybe exactly. So him winning was like a change of reasoning to me. I was like, oh, sometimes the way we view the world is not necessarily the way we view it. And whether you support American politics or not, in one way or the other, it affects us. It affects Africa at a large as a large thing. How? Because America being a superpower state, in one way or another, it has power over all the other states. The policies they make, everything they do, it affects us. So why is this leading me to? It's leading me to what he said. So at the end of it all, the reality is, however much we hate to be a developing country, that's who we are. We are that maybe because of the mistakes we have made, and also maybe because we don't have power over it. Why do I say that? We need to understand civilization did not start with us. By the time we got to know that there is such a thing as civilization existing, we were completely below the bar of civilization, and those people had already civilized. So as we are trying to move from non-civilization at all to a certain level of civilization, where are the people that were already civilized? They're always going a step ahead. What am I trying to say? Even as we struggle with corruption, the bad leadership, all that, I always say this, Jack, when I'm here, at some point we need to look back and be grateful for the little that is there. Because if you look at the Uganda of today, it's not the Uganda that was there maybe 1951. I was in Gulu for the past 3 days, and I was amazed because I had a totally different image of Gulu. Gulu is like so smart. The roads are made. Like every left or right turn you take in Gulu city, it's a tarmacked road, not just a very nice road. You get. So what I'm trying to say is that
I'm very clean. I'm very proud of that.
It has suffered very many insurgencies.
Yes, it's a very nice place. So what I'm trying to say is that we have moved a step of development. We have in one way or the other, regardless of the other impediments that we are facing. As we're moving that step, America is not sitting. America is also moving. So even if we woke up tomorrow and we were a developed country, what do you think America will be? if there is XXXL, I think that would be the third class developed country for America. So in one way or the other, we shall always be affected by America, and we may never be the same level as America. Reason being, by the time we get to the level where they are right now, they would have already moved on to another level. So about the policies and all the changes that he may do, and I believe so much that he's really going to enforce the things he has done, because even within 24 hours of him being announced as president, he ordered for the military reinforcements that was sent to Ukraine. He ordered for them to be withdrawn, and they were, just within 24 hours of being announced as president. So meaning he's someone who is like so determined. So most probably all the things that he has said he's going to do, even about, you know, the black people in America, all that, especially those who are illegally in the country. Also, when you are a beggar, you do not have to be over entitled on someone, and I think maybe that is something that has been happening to us as Africans. So we feel even entitled to begging, like, Drake, I beg sugar from you, you must give me. And that is not the way how life is supposed to be. When you see Trump's manifesto, it's all about prioritizing America. And when you look
and there's nothing wrong with that, really.
Yeah, there is nothing wrong with that. And then when you look at how it has been in America, we have idolized America as a country that does not have any problems for themselves, so they are there to fend for others. And even most presidents, that's what they've been doing. Because Trump's argument was a lot of money was wasted in the Ukraine-Russian war. A lot of money, and in one way or the other, affected the economy of America. So those are things he's trying to, do away with, fight against. Even the aid, you realize maybe because it's a superpower, even the other presidents feel like, oh, we should keep this legacy of being a superpower. Let's give out, let's give more aid, let's do this and that, and then you're forgetting
But I think that's not the thing. The world is evolving so much that it's no longer about what you give. Because it's true that Africa is geopolitically located, and the win of Trump could maybe mean he's so much against China. That one is definitely clear. So for Africa, in my opinion, I think we would now be having this debate that if you're with the Chinese, you may be greatly affected. Because we still have the beggar mentality anyway. Because, very many African countries, if now America is not an option, we'll definitely then have to side with China, we'll have to side with certain with certain Middle Eastern countries, among others, which could be very devastating for the African countries. But I think what the argument that he raises is very good for the growth of our economy. Exactly. And we should look at it, maybe, in my opinion, from a positive way. Exactly. But as you summarize on your argument.
Yeah, definitely, it's going to be survival for the fittest. So if you have to choose between, because Trump is Trump, he's someone who has come bluntly out of saying specific things that he knows even people may be against, but he still goes for it. So that means, however much it may affect you or may be something that does not, help you as a person, if he wants to do it, he's going to do it as long as he's favoring his people come first. So it's going to be survival for the fittest. As an African country, whom would you rather, China or America? Are you going to go with the BRICS currency? Are you going to go with what Trump is, Because at the end of it all, we just have to weigh our options as Africans and keep in mind that we don't have to be beggars forever, We also have to work hard on our side to make sure that at some point we do not have to rely entirely on the aid, because that is what is happening. That's why even, Trump is capable of saying those things, calling us names, because he knows we can't survive without him. So if we can at least, do something to a level whereby, we need the aid, but we could survive without the aid, it would be better for us, Africa as a continent.
All right. Moses, what do you make of the win for Trump and the consequences it has for our continent?
Well, I think my family is watching now. I still recall the night before the 5th of November this year. It was as though we were waiting for Uganda's own election. I'm telling you, by 6 in the morning, by 7 in the morning, which was about 2 American time, our TV was already on. And 80 million people had already voted by that time. This shows how enthusiastic the Americans are comes to choosing the people that will take the initiative. I made a comparison in Uganda. The first time I elected was the most previous presidential election in 2018. That means I'm not so So I got to my polling station, which is in Entebbe, at around 10 in the morning, and believe me, I was among the first people that had voted to that polling station. Now, it made me to get to a point of comparison between the American citizen and Uganda, and not in a bad way. It was out of purity. I wanted to see where Ugandans stand. But then I wasn't surprised at the end of the election, leave alone the presidential election. Of course, the candidate I voted for is the one that won. But when there was that transition, and the members of parliament were elected, but in this case, Trump and Kamala Harris were the icons of that election. I personally was shifting favor in the case of if I were to vote. I would come up with one choice today and come up with another tomorrow. The reasons vary between what was transpired. I don't know if you noticed the time that Kamala Harris spent in that election. You know what led to that? The candidate that the Democrats had fronted for this concluded election was not Kamala Harris. It was
Biden.
The then incumbent president, Joe Biden. Okay? So if Joe Biden had continued in that election, of course, if biology had not betrayed him in a certain way, I mean the old age.
That certainly says that our old man has stood the test.
I know, and repeated biology.
Biology has not betrayed him.
Yes. You know, the president always has this argument that Ugandans should not confuse biology and ideology. But if I'm saying if Joe Biden had continued in this race, I think there would be a more drastic difference in numbers when it comes to that. I don't think he would even pull 60% of what Kamala Harris did. When you're a president, you face very many challenges. I would love to believe.
That is actually, it has a political terminology. It is called the burden of incumbency.
Yes. Very good. Because even the person that eventually won that election, I think even him, when he was daring himself to recontest for that election, he did not have absolute certainty that he was going to win. Do you know why? Do you remember how Trump left Washington? Do you remember the number of times Americans have sidelined him? Do you remember that even after being an ex-president, he faced charges, which I don't know if she said, because the America that we know is the America of the internet. Personally, never been to the US, but for with the reliable sources that we have, the CNN, BBC,
which is the mainstream media that is under scrutiny at this point. And Elon is threatening to buy out some.
Trump was a very frustrated man before his election. I think where he is, of course he doesn't, he's not a strong believer. I think he's like a man that we know here in Uganda, Andrew Mwenda. Andrew Mwenda considers Christianity and the Bible as a moral philosophy, but not just something that people should rely on. I think Trump should be thankful to the Lord. The impact that the election would have on Africa is wide. From the social issues, the military cooperation between US and African states, and trade, notwithstanding the most obvious, health. Very recently, we had a pandemic that was global. If Africa, like it can boldly say now that it can handle its affairs, I don't know how long it took it to come up with a vaccine. The first, I don't know if you're all vaccinated, I would love to believe so, because it was a mandate by the government. They supplied vaccines to almost all hospitals that I know. I personally got 2 doses, but none of those doses were manufactured from Africa. They were manufactured from...
Assure me you took AstraZeneca.
2 shots. I think there was only one that had 1 shot, which was Johnson & Johnson.
That's when it's okay.
He took Johnson & Johnson. If you know the history of Johnson & Johnson, I don't think they are from South Africa.
No.
They are British. Yes. So, but that is foreign. That is foreign. The military cooperation that I look at is, you see, Africa, we've really come from far, like she said. The soldiering that we had as Africans were arrows and spears. That is how, and the battles we used to face were not high budget. My neighbor has attacked me, stolen my property, I'm going to launch. And then there is a commander with 1,000 troops. Some of them have sticks, some of them have spears, others have axes, all things that you could use in short, close combat. But with the intervention of, with the interactions, of course, you know, the first weapon that we acquired as Africans were guns, not what we have now, the armored personnel carriers, the what. All those came up recently. Those ones, at least we paid for them. At least we paid for them. Now, the effect, the impact that the election had, when we have to look at the administration, who heads the administration? In my opinion, it's the president. Like Emmanuel said, we should not put so much trust or raise our expectations in those leaders. When Barack Obama came in power, I think Africa was more happy than the blacks in the United States.
Because it's just black. The idea that it's just black.
They owned him. Meanwhile, Barack Obama, I don't think he has had any history with Africa.
Apart from his eloquence and moving
Actually,
speeches.
the first time he visited Africa was when he was 27 years. He writes about it. And when he's narrating about Africa, it's like how...
But we have that ownership spirit in us.
Yes. Kenyans were very excited. And they are like, this is truly our son. Because they used to say, even Obama, Barack, the names are really Kenyan. That they have strong meaning. Yes, the Obama stands for original black American, black African managing America. Obama became president. I think his target was majorly Africa. When the CIA, there's a documentary even on YouTube on how they were able to neutralize Colonel Muammar Gaddafi.
They planned for that for 30 years.
Yes, they did. But who executed? Who came up with a better plan to do that?
The plan started in 1986.
Yes. They had. But when Barack Obama came, the CIA finished him.
But the argument is he killed one of their own. He orchestrated that killing through Iran and I think the Middle Eastern countries. That was the argument, because you kill one American one attack on an American is attack on the world. So.
Well, I do not know how true or untrue that is, but all I know is that America, as a country, has always had, I don't know, I think it is in the genetic makeup of every president of America to have a problem with Muslim states.
But Trump defies that because Trump is someone who aligns with Iran. Trump is someone who, like he's against the traditional, the typical idea that an American president should be. So that therefore does it pose a positive impact for the continent or negative impact?
Well, it does. With Trump administration coming up, I do not. You know, Trump is an open book. Okay, Trump is not a politician. I would love to believe he's an open book.
I side with you on that.
He's an open book. He will say this, and that will be. I think basically because even us, the onlookers, our expectations in him are not more than what he says. Okay, when he says this is my idea about immigration, he will state it the way it is.
Yeah.
He will state it the way it is. Because, and his reasons are valid. One is the people that illegally come into the country are the most people that end up in gangs or bring up, and in this case it's not African states, leave alone for the Muslim states that are being falsely accused, I want to say. The Mexicans, the US is facing that problem. There are very many cartels, you know, that align with drugs and, you know, all those operations that deal with that. Now, the other thing maybe that I want to capitalize on is trade. Most recently, the social issue that came up that you all knew was the LGBTQ. Now that is the most social issue that could have deterred our relationship with the US, okay? Resulting to
Sanctions.
Sanctions, expulsion from AGOA. We were expelled. I don't know if you know that.
Yeah.
And that was, I think that was now a sanction for all of us. Now there was also a sanction that was not direct, but it was as a result of us not believing the same thing as they did. So the US did not respect our African values. Because between you and I do not believe, and I can boldly say this because this is what as a country we all agree to. I do not know a member of parliament that was opposing a concept to make it illegal for people to be homosexuality or lesbian, transgender, and all those letters that end up with that. So, as Africans, we are only going to get into cooperation with not only America, states that one respect us, okay? Because we've transited, I would love to believe, from the then states that they knew, the ones that they colonized, to the states that we are now. But obviously they cannot do it directly. He mentioned things about people leaving the country, going to the United States. I would love to tell you that they go with the expectation of living something called the American dream, which is quite the vibe. Very recently, Honorable Muhammad Iseriko was going to attend, I think they call it a KCCA council meeting. And to his surprise, 70% of the councillors had gotten visas and they were out of the country. Not on official duty, not on tour, but rather on permanent residence. Where? In the United States, leaving 30%. Imagine political leaders that people have entrusted. And these are NUP, I have to say. These are all NUP, I have to say. And he said that we cannot be proud of a country when the government, I think, if I'm not quoting you wrong, has not created
an environment that leaves everyone to thrive.
Yes. Now, honestly, a councillor, at whatever level it is,
Okay? This is a hopeful leader.
Maybe as a summary.
As I summarize, this is a hopeful leader that goes. And what jobs are they taking up in the US? These people are working in nursing homes. Do you want to know what kind of work is being done in nursing homes? I don't want to disgust myself by discussing that here.
All right, we have just reached towards the end of our show. I'll just quickly give all of you 60 seconds or less to give us your concluding remarks and your thoughts. I'll start with the lady.
Oh, thank you very much. It has been a wonderful show, looking into African politics vis-a-vis what is happening with the whole coffee thing. But in conclusion, at this moment, we can't change what has happened already. What has happened. So most probably making noise right now won't change anything. Maybe we just have to do what the previous person was here said. Just hope for when the chance will come, and maybe we shall use it to rectify things and make them what we feel they should best be.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Moses.
Well, I would love to conclude by urging Africans and African leaders to let Africa be for Africans, and we can manage our affairs. We do not need other people, at least, to make our decisions. We can make our decisions, then rely on other people for various activities, trade. I think that should be our priority. But Africa should be for Africa.
Thank you. Emmanuel.
Thank you so much, Drake. I want to conclude by taking cognizance of the fact that as a matter of fact and nature, life will always subject us to a cocktail of kind of relationship. That is, we shall always encounter the good and the bad. But of course, we need to know that anything bad in regards to the leadership and how we run and our society does affect us so much. So I want to challenge and call upon those that still have the smallest conviction and the intuition that can be able to open their eyes to this reality and be able to do something, to actually do it. Because if that doesn't happen, definitely we are going to suffocate. And that is basically what I have to say. I want to say thank you to you, Drake, for hosting me and my co-panelists. It's been nice having a deliberation with you, and to the camera crew and our esteemed viewers. Thank you so much for giving us your time and attention.
Thank you. You've heard it there from the panelists. Thank you very much, Emmanuel, Debrah, Moses, and Masawi, for taking time to join us in this conversation. Tonight we have been discussing about the presidential address after the rationalization of UCDA, but also we looked at US election and its consequences on our continent, Africa. And it's been a wonderful discussion. Thanks to all of you who has made this possible, to the technical crew, Paul, Brittany, and Ronald for making this possible, Civic Space TV, and Center for Constitutional Governance. And to you, our dear esteemed viewers, continue watching, and see you next week, same time, same place.